Kia mea te atau e pai ai ki runga ki te whenua. Kia rite ano ki tō te rangi. O mai kia mātou ai anei. E taro ma mātou mo te nei rā murua o mātou hara. Me mātou hoki e muru nei. I o te hunga e hara ana ki a mātou. Aua hoki mātou e kawea. Kia whakawaia. Engari whakaorangia. Ato i te kino. No hoki te rangatiratanga. Te kaha me te koroia.
Morena koutou ata Māori e koutou katoa. Liam, please.
He mua koe he mātou e hihoa. He tohu tohu he mātou mahi katoa. Ko koe ano hoki he whakakaha i a mātou. Kia whai kororia ai koe i a mātou mahi katoa. He mea ti māta, he mea mahi, he mea whakaoiti i roto i a koe. Kia whiwhi ai hoki mātou ki te ora tonu. I te mea e atawhaitia nei e koe. Ko hihu karaiti hoki tō mātou ariki. Āmene.
Amen. Julian.
E te whanua, nao mai hare mai ki tēne kaupapa Taha Māori. Nā mai hare mai, whakatau mai, no reira tēnā koto, tēnā tato katoa.
Just in this section here, as you might already be aware, that every time we have an opening mihi and anything to open meetings, karakia, on marae, everything is supported by a waiata tautoko, or supporting waiata. Today I want to introduce you to No Mai Piki Mai. Some of you may have already heard it. It was written by Tā Kingi Ihaka in the 70s, and it is a welcome. It is a welcome waiata tautoko, and it's performed by his son, Tom Ihaka.
Tēnā iruia, kata hika rua kato, nau mai piki mai, e ngā iwi e. Ngā reo ngā mana, tēnā ra koutou katoa. Ano te pai me te mai piki mai e ngā iwi e ngā reo ngā mana tēnā ra koutou katoa tēnā ra koutou katoa au e hei.
Just want to apologize to everybody today. We seem to be having some problems with our internet or certainly our slideshow this morning. And I'm not sure what's causing it. It shouldn't, but apparently it is. So my apologies to you all. I hope it will get through everything today well enough for you to be able to get, everything that we have to offer. So I understand that you couldn't see Tom Ihaka performing that, and sometime in the future we'll do that live. How about we do that live and we'll all stand up and we'll all participate. And I'll teach you actually this waiata tautoko in person. And perhaps you can go away in your rooms and practice it, or you can go to your homes or your parishes and practice it. This is a stock standard welcome song performed by the Maori Anglican Club. And it's one that I encourage you to learn, and it's always one that you can use after that initial mihi. So it'll be very, very helpful for you in that setting, in that context. Of course, we've got our normal disclaimers, I'm not a real translator and I don't have any distinguished academic qualifications to do this. Also, in this coming section, we'll be doing unpacking. We're unpacking a lot of the liturgy today. Quite an insight into the translations and the translators. So the following sections they're not an approved translation of the liturgy. So please note that this is not something you can use currently on a regular basis in your context. But rather just think of it as simply telling the story of the words. You probably already heard this before, that the Māori translation on the left-hand side of the 4th and 6th prayer does not match entirely the English version on the right-hand side. So I told you in the past that Māori have this wonderful way of telling stories. They unpack that in a really lovely way. And so, yes, please treat the following sections as not an approved liturgy for use in our current churches. The Eucharistic liturgies, of course, the 4, 7, 6, we've covered some of that to 490, and we'll cover a little bit more of that today. We'll also move in your prayer book. So you've got prayer books in front of you, you by all Bishop. Many of you know that Hori is George. So Pīhopa Hori, I would start question, please, or a couple of questions, please, Pīhopa Hori. I understand that you were the scribe. You were the scribe at the time that these translations were done. So could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Ka noho au I te motu o te waiheke o kahumata momoe. Ka mihi ki a Ngāti Pāua te mana whenua. Me he mea, I noho etahi o ngā hapu o Aotearoa I tēnei motu, I ngā tau whārau. Ka tūtono etahi o rātou ingo maunga, ingo whenua, ingo motu. Hai mokai i Aotearoa waka, i Aotearoa tangata. I roto I tērā, ko matawhaura te maunga, ko te roto iti ki te aihenga te moana, ko te waiiti te awa, ko nā te hene kura te hapu, ko nā te pakiha te iwi. Tēnā koutou, ko hori kona hau. I live on Waiheke Island. I acknowledge Ngāti Paoa as mana whenua, but I also note that Te Arawa for 400 years lived on this island, and many of the Te Arawa names are still here. I was nurtured by the Te Arawa people. In that regard, Matawhaura is the mountain, Rotuiti is the moana, Waiti is the river, Ngāti Hinakura is the sub-tribe, Ngāti Pikau is the tribe. As an aside, Aucklanders know that Rangitoto, but its full name is Te Rangitoto o Tamatakapua, and Tamatakapua was the captain of the Awa canoe. His son, Kahumata Momoi, is named in the full name of this island and also in the full name of the lake at Rotorua. And the nephew, Ihenga, is in the full name of the island next to us, next to Waiheke, often called Motu Ihe or Motu He, and the proper name is Te Motu o Ihenga. So these Arawa names are here. Coming to your question, Jacinthia, the prayer book commission spent 24 years from 1964 preparing the book. There were diglot versions of the 1966 New Zealand liturgy and the 1970 New Zealand liturgy, and both of those followed what we call the word-for-word translation. In February 1987, after all the many sections of the English text were finished, Bishop Hui Verco called together a small group to work on translation, and he said to us, "We've been given 6 weeks to do the whole lot." He also commented, one of the prayer book commission says we should begin with creation and redemption, so we definitely won't be doing that. What we did do, we said we've got 6 days together, we'll try and do one of the Eucharists, and that's how we came to do Thanksgiving and Praise, Te Whakamoemiti me Te Whakawhetai, which in our book is pages 476 and following. I was the scribe of that group. I was a member of the group, and every evening I would type up what we was the beginning of computers in those days, so I typed it up and then I'd make photocopies for everyone for the following day, and so we worked our way through. So yes, I was the scribe, and the last one left, I'm afraid.
Wow. Wow. I've had to stop the slideshow for the moment, see if we can get some stability in our internet. Thank you for that, Pīhopa. That must have been such an insight for you. I know I definitely would have loved to have been there, and I've been there in some of the latter parts of it. And thank you for your mihi aroha mai for not allowing you to do that in the first instance. Guilty. He pātai tuaru, second pātai to you is, what did Māori Marsden say about making ritual water gospel wine, for instance, in the translations, which is on page, for those of you who have got your prayer book in front of you, making ritual water gospel wine, and how did that set the kaupapa for the rest of the translations?
Well, we'd begun meeting, and obviously that's the third paragraph of that Eucharist, and we just got to that, and my memory is, and I mean I didn't have a tape recorder, but my memory is that Maori said, "I'm not even sure what this means in English, let alone how I'm going to say it in Maori." And that began a big debate, a wide-ranging debate we really felt imprisoned by this rule word for word. And we said, we need to let the flow of Maori oratory, the flow of Maori poetry, we need to let that be in our translation. So we actually broke out at that point and decided that we would translate the meaning rather than word for word. And so if you notice in your book on the top of page 476, it says the English and Maori are parallels. That is to warn you that it's not necessarily a direct translation.
Yeah, and I imagine that there would have been many times where there were similar, you know, sentences and things, as you said, you know, it did set sort of the precedence as to how do we view this, how are we going to say this, and I think we've already discussed in past sessions that we might say it in an entirely different way, but it means actually the same thing. So that must have been an interesting journey for you. I'm going to try sharing the screen again. Let's see how we go on it. So that we can bring the script up for you. And so Pīhopa, you'll be able to see this is the He Waiata Whakamoemiti, the songs of praise, and I wonder if I could let you continue on with your kōrero.
Yes, I want to look at some of these translations using the technique which the Bible Society calls back translation. In other words, you translate something from one language to another, and then you get someone else to translate it back so that you can find out whether you translated it well. And I'm just using that technique, and the writing on the English on these next slides, most of the next slides, this back translation. So as Jacinthia has pointed out, it's not liturgical, it's not authorized, it's not for public reading aloud, but I'm suggesting you have your book open and compare the back translation with the English in your book, and we'll just go through a bit of it. Christ is the living water, washing, making all things new. He is the bread of life, food for the hungry, strength for the stranger, and for the workers. Now, you look at the English, in the book, it's not terribly different, is it? It's just slightly different, but not terribly different. So go on to the next slide. To Cynthia, can we have the next one?
Yep.
Hasn't come.
You can't see it?
Oh, yes, no. Noreda. Now, this one is quite a lot different from the, no, we want Noreda, yes. This one is quite a lot different from the English. Therefore, we offer you our praise for the great sky above, for Mother Earth lying here, for the lofty mountains, for the renowned hills, for the tides that that greet the dead, for the widespread seas. This last phrase is a Maori proverb. Now you can see that is a little bit different, although it follows the similar idea of the English, of beauty of places and the bush and the mountains and so on. But the language is a little bit different. It's more the sort of Maori that we hear in the marae. We could go to another one. Norunga.
Can you see it?
Yes,
Yeah.
Norunga. From above come all good things. Grant peace or grant calm to the skies above, to settle the dust to the land lying here, and let the sea glisten like greenstone, and let calm be widespread throughout Aotearoa. Now, that doesn't seem to have anything to do with the English, but it's just paraphrasing, if you like, some of the things in the next paragraph. Go on to the next one. Top of the next page of the book. Kia whakapainga. Can we go over to the next one? Okay, it's come up. Now this is there's no parallel in the English, and this paragraph follows the thought of the previous paragraph. It invokes the memory of all that has happened in this land among our communities and uses poetic allusions to say it. The reference to those who've gone before us, those who stood tall, those who took a prominent part in sharing the gospel and were orators, loudmouth parakeets, as it's called, were supporting mourners, springs of water, referring to elderly women at a tangi, and all are gathered up into Christ. So my back translation is, let us bless Christ for the ancestors, the parents, the holy ones, who are the sheltering tōtara, the sentinel rocks, the loudmouth parakeets, the springs of tears. Let enlightenment shine on them, and their rest is assured. Glory to God. So it's in the same style as the previous three paragraphs, but it just gathers all the thoughts together. And it's obviously quite different. There's no English text beside it.
Thank you, Pīhopa. Leads me to my next question, which is who were the translators, and did they often agree or disagree, or is there anything you can enlighten us in terms of the translators?
Well, we know that there are little bits of Maori in 404 and in morning and evening prayer. And there were, in the first part of the work of the translation, people like Mana Titoki Cameron, Manuhuia Bennett, Kahutia Tahau, Kingi Ihaka, Arawera Blank, and others. But they were lone voices in a committee, a commission of 10 to 15 people of what I might call often argumentative group. And they found it a bit lonely. Then Bishop Ben Tahara, who died recently, was the lone voice for the last 10 years of the commission. So when it came to translating 476 to Whakamoemiti me Te Whakawhetai, Bishop Hui called together a group, and the group were Hui Verko, Ben Tahara, John Tamahori, Maury Marsden, Brown Ture, Jim Tahere, and I'm the last one standing. So just a small group. Did we disagree? Not really. People would search their memory for appropriate words and phrases and try them out. And if someone came up with a word that was better, it was readily adopted. I can't remember exactly who said what, or that person said, or that person said. I can't remember even the ones that I put in. But it was a wonderful cooperative effort, and using the rhythms of the marae and the rhythms of speech, and it's become quite memorable, this 476 Maori translation.
Yes. Wow, that's some big guns there. I'll just quickly share, just to share my own experience in terms of translations, and you were there, Pīhopa Hori, when we were doing the collects and sentences that are currently in the new revised version of the book. And we were sitting around the table and we were having this discussion that kind of went round and round and round about this. I was racked with guilt. I think you might remember that day. I was racked with guilt was a sentence in English. And it went around the table a few times, and there was kind of lots of discussions about what we could say about it and what we ought to say about it, but does it really capture what it's trying to say? I was racked with guilt. And Āti Pīhopa, Archbishop Brown, was sitting there very quietly, and we invited him to, have you got anything to add to this? And he came back and he spoke about when he was a child, and when he did something a little naughty. Dare I say this publicly, that Archbishop Brown did something naughty when he was a child. But when he did something naughty when he was a child, he always felt this really biting in his stomach, something in his stomach bit at him, like we have butterflies and things like that. And the word he ended up offering us was the word ngau,
Aye.
N-G-A-U,
Aye.
ngau, to bite, And there's an example of one word, ngau, N-G-A-U, that spoke into this being wrapped with feeling rather than saying it in a whole series of words. He said it simply in a feeling.
Yes, I think just to add to that, a lot of the words, of course, were in the minds of the translators because they knew their paipera tapu well, they knew their rauwiri well. A lot of the words come from that world, the spiritual world of kōrero and prayer and so on. But of course, yes, there are sometimes you struggle to translate a concept, and you look for a word in very human situations. Yes, there are many examples like that. I'm sorry, I haven't written them down, but
No,
yes, you're right.
It's just something that I experienced. Yeah.
Yes, I can remember Peter Winsor at one meeting saying, "Oh, my grandfather used to use this word," and none of the rest of us knew it. But then when we heard it, we thought, "Oh, that's a great word to use."
Yes.
So, yes.
Yes, and just so that everybody knows, I was described towards the end of the sentences and collects that are currently in the revised prayer book at the moment, and I found it was an honour and a blessing to be that scribe for them and actually listen to the kōrero, to the discussions, to the thinking, to the debates even, no, that doesn't say that, no, that doesn't mean this, just delightful. So to sit with all those great Pīhopa Hori that you sat with, wow, that's a real wow.
Well, just to make a quick comment on that, when we were doing the 1971 diglot, way back in the day, the really sad thing was that the real guns were still alive. The real scholars, the real orators, and they couldn't do it. They had to be bound by this word for word business. And looking back, I feel it was such a waste that the real scholars didn't ever get the chance to do the more of the translation.
Yes. Yes, there's been a question come through people about, they're asking why isn't this translation available for in the book now, particularly for pakiha, of course. Do you want to answer that?
Sorry, say it again.
The question was, why isn't this translation available already in the prayer book, or particularly, available for pakiha?
Well, because the prayer book carries the theology and the doctrine of the church, and that's why it's an authorized book. So the English text they spent 24 years creating the English text. A back translation is just a way of checking or giving an insight into the meaning of the Maori. But it's not written to be a liturgical text. I was going to tell you the story later, but I'll tell you now. I did this back translation. Bishop Muru did one for John Bluck when he was Dean of Christchurch. And when I went to Dunedin, I found it was a bit too close to the English, so I did another one for the group in Dunedin, which has a weekly Eucharist at the cathedral. And I tried to get the flavour of the Maori. So, and my version, which these texts are from, is actually edition 12, because I keep retranslating. But not everyone understands or respects. And I had the embarrassing situation that I went to the inauguration of the cathedral in Taranaki, and the back translation, which was unauthorized and unliturgical and everything else, was in the printed form and there was the Archbishop of York and everyone, the whole country was there, and it just was embarrassing for the translator, but embarrassing because the text wasn't written to be read. The text was just to give an insight into the Maori. So that's why I keep stressing, and Jacynthia has made the point that this is an unauthorized. Now, all I can say is the authorized text is fine. It's written to be read, but the back translation is not written to be read. It's written to give an insight into the words. That's all I can say, really.
Yeah, thank you, Pīhopa. Yeah, thank you. And I think often, you know, part of our theological journey into the kupu, or the words from a Maori, using a Maori lens, is beautiful. The story itself, the journey itself, on how the poetry that Maori have used to say the same thing, but it's not said word for word, it's said in a story. And certainly I, for one, enjoy learning about that story, which you're here to help us do that, Pīhopa. Thank you. I'm going to move us on to He Tikanga Whakapono, which again is sung today by the Kailo whānau. So this is also part of, you know, the liturgy in our book.
Page
481. So I've just got to somehow, okay, I can get down going. So I'm having all sorts of challenges this morning with my technology. No te mana te ihi, te wehi, no te ao te Māori, te ora, no te kato I te rangi te whenua ko koe tonu, te o koe te marangatanga, o te I te ahora koe I roto I te pori. Ka puta ke tau tamako ihu, karaki. Hei pau toko manoa mo te ao ko koe tonu, te atua. O koe te wairua, o koe takuranga, o koe taku tōpō, o koe taku oranga,
Na koe.
o koe tonu rā,
Te
atua,
atua.
kororia,
Ia koe.
Well, I'm not as flash as the Shiloh whānau, but there you go. That's the chant that Māori currently use in most services on Sundays. Kia ora. So we're moving on now
Can we
to...
just can we have a look at that for a moment? And just...
Yep.
If you have your book open at 481, look at the English. I'm going to read the back translation, and I want you just to hear it and You, the holy God, the absolute God, yours are authority, dignity, awe. Yours is the world, its life principle, its wholeness. Yours is everything in the heavens and on earth. You are constant God. Next section. You are the light of the world. You shine through the darkness. You reveal your Son, Jesus Christ, as the central pillar of faith for the world. You are constant God. And the third paragraph. You are the Holy Spirit. You are my staff. You are my walking stick. You are my heart's desire. You are constant God. Glory to you. Now, you compare that with the English. It's a bit different, and you can pick up some of the things. Obviously, a walking staff is a reference to Psalm 23, but some of it is the language. It's just more poetic, and as you heard, you hear people singing it, Maori worshipping, chanted, and it's a sort of rhythmic thing, and everyone joins in, and it's become, in the last 30 years, it's become known and loved. So, but the meaning is just slightly different from the English. That's the point I'm making.
Yes, beautiful. And that word toko toko, you know, I imagine, you know, many speakers on marae, and even a woman like Infinite Cooper, you know, she always waved her toko toko when she was trying to make a point. And so, you know, using a Māori lens.
I hope she didn't whack anyone.
I got a couple of little swipes around the leg. When I was young. Okay, so tell us a little bit about. Oh, hang on, we've got. Yeah, page 481. Isn't it? Not sure what that noise is. Somebody's got sounds going, or you need to mute yourself.
We're going on to 487. Yes, that's what we want. Now, this is the last paragraph on that page, and it's just to point out that in translating, the translators looked at what the English, the official text, is what is called a soft epiclesis, the prayer for the Holy Spirit to change the bread and wine to the body and blood of Christ. And the Maori is less hesitant, shall we say. It's a strong epiclesis. Make this bread truly the body, this wine truly the blood. So it's just the language is a bit more forceful, shall we put it that way?
Right. Right. And the next page,
to the top of the next.
Oh dear.
Oh, what happened? Everything's frozen up. I can hear you, Julian.
I think we might have just lost George on his side.
Right. But you can hear okay.
Yes, we can hear okay.
Okay. He was going on to page 488. If you can see that on the screen, he'll come back shortly, I'm sure. Karu mātou ia te karaiti. Now we follow Christ. So he's used bind as that tuia, which is quite indicative, really, of our three-threaded Anglican Church here in our province, how we bind ourselves together. That's not new to you. It's a language that we've been using for a long time. It's indicative in our cross, our branding, as it were, for Aotearoa, for this province, the cross that's on the inner pages of the cover on our prayer book. So it's that binding is that same thing about being threaded together. which is what, why they use this word bind in this sense. Bind us to pain so that we know the feeling of pain, and so we're able to resonate with that context. Bind us to hope. We know what hope is, rising out of pain, rising out of desperation, and not to divorce ourselves from those feelings, as it were, and bind us to life. Beautiful oratory for this section of the Eucharistic prayer. And so Kea koe tapu o te rangi, you are the holy of the sky. So if you're looking at your book, you'll see that there is a difference. This is the story. You are the holy of the sky, the origin of all things, the beginning, the completion, the Alpha and the Omega. Kia koe te whakapai, you have praise, glory, compassion, this day, that day, from us, from all, here and in all places. So similar, yes, but also slightly different. This is the concluding prayers after Hakari Tapu. And this is the translate, bless God who gathers us together, praise, and the response, what we're saying, praise God who makes us one. And in English, in your books, I think it says, praise God who makes us one people. So very similar again. So I'll just skip through that slide. There's not a lot of difference between that and what's in the book. But the one we want to point you to really is this last line. This last line of the prayers after communion. Ko taurau, ko takurau, ka mā kona mātou. So your food basket, my food basket, will sustain us. It's a beautiful translation, and one that is used actually with orators. They talk about, we come together for this particular discussion. We're going to talk about whatever's going to happen in our hapu and our iwi. And so whilst we might have disagreements about what that might actually look like, but with your basket and with my basket, we're aiming for something to sustain us, something to be sustainable, something to give wellness to the people involved, that common good, I guess, is possibly the best way to describe that. So that's a lovely way of ending a mihi. We've had the mihi at the beginning, and if you will learn later how to do the mihi at the end, how to conclude at the end. And this is a sentence you can include in your mihi. Ko taurau, ko takurau, ka mā kona mātou. Beautiful way to end on. Pīhopa Hori, have you rejoined us? Nope. Okay. We'll keep going. So one of the questions I was going to ask him, and it's quite critical, but we might have to come back to that in another session, I think. It's to unpack the 499, which doesn't have any English translation at all. And I certainly don't consider myself to be an authority in this area, but certainly Pīhopa Hori is. And there's a number of areas that he wanted to concentrate on. And we've got some translations that goes with it. Yeah, so we'll pick that up at another time. So they're all the 499s. And if you were still willing, I'm happy to run another series of Land of the Long White Cloud. And that time sort of crept away from us. And if I'll just stop sharing. And I can see you all. So if you'd like to see this next session of Land of the Long White Cloud, just put your hand up. Oh, that's unanimous. Okay, all right. Now, Margaret, is Margaret still with us? Margaret, yeah, you've been mistakenly made host. You're mistakenly host. So can you go down the bottom of your screen and hover over participants?
I see. I've come back to you. I don't know what's happened.
Yes. Yes. Okay, Pīhopa, I finished what we were doing in the 476, and what I've done is I've parked up the 499. Can we revisit that perhaps next week?
Sure. Sorry about that.
Okay.
I don't know what happened.
No. Yes, I know. We're having all sorts of problems with our technology. So, Margaret, I've made you host. I wonder if you can go in there and unhost yourself, because I don't have the power to do it.
She needs to make someone else host first. She needs to make someone else host first so that we don't drop it.
Or Margaret, if you go to Cynthia and make me host, when you hover over participants, it's not a biggie. I can still operate, but Megan can't. So yes, Pīhopa, I continued on with the 490, and I talked about that last sentence, ko tauroro, ko takuroro, ka mākona mātou. So we unpacked that a little bit, which is something that I encourage them to use, you know, when they're doing presentations, when they're doing a mihi, when they're concluding a presentation, speaking into, if we all make an effort and if we all put our little bit in, we will contribute to the wellness of our communities and our people. Okay, all right. Well, I'll share the screen again and we'll go to Land of the Long White Cloud. And because you already know the kōrero and kaupapa. So let's hear from psychotherapist and author, Juliet Batten. No.
I hear pakiha with these agonizing questions. Am I appropriating? Am I stealing? Well, those questions arise when we can ask Maori to supply our spiritual void, our spiritual emptiness. And that's colonizing again, in a way. I was a full-time artist, then I became a full-time writer, that I still am, and I recently retired from psychotherapy. Since I turned 70, I started online teaching the sacred art of ritual to help people connect with the earth more deeply. Hello, I'm Juliet Batten. I'm setting up an altar here. You want to bring in symbols that have life energy in them. Ritual is about bringing the magic back into life. In the late 70s, in feminism, we were really doing analyses which were about how structures support certain forms of oppression. And then, of course, Maori women were involved in feminism, and they started saying, well, you white people with your structures, you're oppressing us. Then we started having anti-racism works. And the anti-racism work, it just filtered into everything I did. When you first find out colonization has affected and still affects Maori, not only me, but most of my friends, we just felt so guilty. We didn't actually do those bad things personally. It was our people who did it. But we are part of the institutions and the consequences. We participate in the privilege that was gained from those actions. And in the end, we have to take responsibility. We can't change the past, but we can change the future starting from today. I think of them as different layers of work, the anti-racism work. One layer is really the political, economic work, and there's the social health work, and then there's the cultural layer, and this is where my work lies. I teach ritual work to help people feel more connected with the land. When we're grounded in who we are, that's when we're better able to reach to those who are different from us. All the stories are coming out now about Captain Cook's encounters with Maori, and we need, as pakiha, to hear the stories and be strong enough to feel the pain. To be strong enough to feel the pain, we need to be strong in our own identity. I think so many pakiha, we're up in our heads. There has been a separation from the old earth-based spirituality. There's also a huge dislocation from the land. When the white settlers came to Aotearoa, they brought with them the Gregorian calendar and just imposed it on this land, and they didn't even notice that they were 6 months out of alignment. And so they didn't notice that they were celebrating Christmas and summer solstice. Whereas the Christmas festival, for example, it's a winter solstice festival, and it belongs in June in the middle of winter. And that comes from a certain mindset of superiority and certainly not able to understand Indigenous culture. So how do pakiha come into a reciprocal relationship with Maori when so many feel bereft and they say, I'm empty, I don't have anything, I go to them and Maori are so full of spirituality. If we come into a relationship feeling that we're empty and we need to be filled up, we're going to take. We're going to say to the others, fill me up, give me what I haven't got. Now that's not coming into relationship of giving and receiving, a reciprocal relationship. I can relate to so many of the Maori spiritual practices, but they're not mine from my heritage. If I dig deep enough into my ancestry, what I find is my Celtic ancestors were closely connected with the land. We too celebrated the harvest, the planting. They put posts in the ground to mark, watch the stars. They were different stars, of course, but I've grown up here with these Southern Hemisphere stars. When I have richness in me, then I'm not having to take anything from Maori. I have something to give. My Celtic ancestors would always begin their rituals with honouring the 4 elements of life: the water, the fire, the earth and the air, and they would honour the centre, which is the meeting point where everything comes together. I usually offer my work to the sea and do it on the incoming tide, so the sea comes and takes it. So working with ritual is working with transformation on many, many levels. Connecting with our own ancestry as pakiha gives us a place to stand. Then we can get on with doing the work that needs to be done. To build partnership with Maori through shared spiritual values, to gather and share the taonga from our different cultures and join together in being kaitiaki of this beautiful land.
Well, given our time constraint. I think we probably haven't got time actually to go into breakout rooms. But what I can do is offer, if you want to stay on at the end, you know, by all means, let's have a plenary discussion about Land of the Long White Cloud this week. And that's fine. Let's have an open discussion as part of the group at the end. But just some new names for this week: Waipaua, Oua. You know, these three vowels together: Oua, Waipaua. And in that first is Taha Mahuta. Kaio, Te Oneroa o Tohe, Moerewa, Maunga Turoto, Maunga Turoto. Just some new names for you. And of course, Ngā Mautere o te Moana Nui a Kiwa is Polynesian Islands, the islands of Polynesia, or the islands of the ocean. So please keep practicing your mouth sounds. Thank you very much, Liam, for who did our mihi. I'm sorry, I've forgotten who did our mihi, but that was great pronunciations. They're coming along really well. Keep practicing, keep playing the past YouTube. So if you need to listen to this guy who's fabulous, keep practicing, keep practicing. The My Mihi Challenge, of course, we received 6 so far. Yay! And we want at least 10 or 15. And I kind of need them by next week if I can, because I then need to work with the production to give you something on our last session, on our 7th and final session of this series. So if you've got them nearly ready, yep, just send them along to me to Taha Māori. That'd be really great. Any favorites you've got waiata himene, by all means, then let me know, and I'm happy to include them. Hopefully I don't have to sing them myself and I'll be able to find somebody to do that for you. And we are looking for volunteers. So part of the whole Taha Māori, you know, thinking and is around your participation. So don't be frightened. Don't be filled with paralysis. We've talked about paralysis before through the Land of the Long White Cloud. And even though I might be the only sort of Māori with you, your colleagues are also people that might scare you also. You know, might induce some paralysis that, oh, what if I muck it up and my colleague from, you know, the other parish will hear me muck it up. Don't let that happen. Don't think that. This is a safe environment. And let's respect the learning that we're trying to do here. So your participation in the opening prayers, closing prayers, rather than letting it fall on the same shoulders, would be really great, really, really great. And you can email your participation to Taha Māori, of course. And we'll close in prayer as per our normal practice. You'll notice that I've stuck with the same 2 prayers. They're prayers that are used often on a marae. They're prayers that are used often in Māori contexts. So if you can lock these down, you know you can always use them when called upon. So I call upon Sapati now to close us in prayer. So Sapati, you'll need to unmute yourself. Here he comes. He'll be with us in a second.
I think he's saying the prayer now. He doesn't realize he's muted. Can someone unmute him?
No, because we've lost control of hosting. So Sapati, would you mind unmuting yourself, please? Sapati. Is he still going? His audio is not connected. Okay.
No, he's now looking at the camera. We could signal to him, perhaps.
Okay. Sapati, we couldn't hear you. So you need to do it again and unmute yourself. Say it again. Thank you. Okay. But thank you, Sapati. Yeah. E te atua kaharawa. E tū whera ana ngā katoa ki a koe. E mōhio ana ngā hiahia katoa. E kore hoki, e ngaro i a koe te mea huna. Whakahangia iho tō wairua tapu. Hei whakamā i ngā whakaro o mātou ngākau. Kia tino aroha ai mātou ki a koe. Kia tika ai te whakanui i tō ingoa tapu. Ko ihu karaiti nei tō mātou ariki. Āmini.
Āmini.
And hopefully the audio will work on this next one. We're singing the grace, but in a different tune. Oh, maybe not. Maybe not. Oh, here we go. Here's
Kia tātou katoa, kia ta whai o tō tātou riki, a iu karaiti, me te aroha o te atua, me te whiwhingata hitanga ki te wairua tātou, ake, āmine. Kia ora tātou.
That's a lovely version of the grace, another tune, a little bit more, well, it depends on where you live, I guess, will depend on which version you learn. For me personally, that's the one I like the best. Nō reira e te whānau. Nō reira e Pīhopa Hori, thank you so much for being with us today, and we're sorry about all the technology, yours included. You got booted off too, and all sorts of strange things have happened today with our technology. So, ngā mihi mahana kia koe, ngā mihi aroha kia koe, mō tō aroha kia mātou, mō tō tautoko kia mātou I roto I Taha Māori. Tēnā koe te Pīhopa. Nō reira e te whānau a te karaiti ka kitea koutou anō I te rā taite o tērā wiki. That's Thursday, next Thursday, the 22nd. I'll be in a different location, so hopefully my internet will be a little bit more stable. It'll be the same time, same link. Feedback, of course, can be sent to Taha Māori. Do send us your feedback and also your My Mihi videos. I'm looking forward to that. Happy to discuss anything you'd like to discuss. Let's open it up. Land of the long white cloud, we